Chapter 21 Massacre. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At this moment, Bai Ye has successfully appeared on the homepage of major media websites in the United States with his appearance and the blessing of the robbery case. Handsome, 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 this is the true love that I will pursue for the rest of my life. Excellent photo, he made my eyes spin. Damn it, the damn robbers actually played this kind of imprisonment game. It's really enviable. What do you think my husband is doing? On the current website, although the incident took place less than half an hour ago, it has quickly attracted the attention of millions of people, and the entire incident is still developing, attracting more and more people to watch. When he came back from outside the bank, Bai Ye was in a terrible mood. Thinking back to the crowds of people outside just now, he really didn't want to be famous at this time. It's been full of plans. It's been less than a week since Bai Ye got the panel. Now he may not even be able to beat Captain America. He really doesn't want to stand in the spotlight openly. As a result, the reality was not what he expected. He wrote the script randomly and didn't even have time to develop, so he just did this kind of big job. Seeing Bai Ye's return, the four robbers who had been targeting him from behind now gathered around him, all satisfied with Bai Ye's performance. You are quite courageous. You are not afraid at all. The robber leader looked at Bai Ye and couldn't help but asked, and the suitcase you brought, there is so much cash and a gold ball in it, how can you, a student, have such a thing? Plant something. I picked it up. If nothing happens, I will go back. Bai Ye said perfunctorily, constantly telling himself to be patient. Suppressing the rising murderous intention in his heart, Bai Ye ignored the robber in front of him and wanted to return to the crowd, but was blocked by a robber. What's your attitude, you kid? How dare a hostage talk to us like this? I'm sorry for you, right? A robber stood in front of Bai Ye with contempt on his face. You're so good looking, let me show you first. With that said, he raised his hand to touch Bai Ye's cheek, but was caught by Bai Ye before he could make contact. Hey, you still dare to resist? The robber wanted to take out his hand and beat the pretty boy in front of him, but when he raised his eyes, he saw a cold and murderous gaze looking at him. With a soft sound in his ear, he felt a sharp pain in his heart, and warm liquid gushes out from his chest. Do you know how long I've been putting up with you idiots? Bai Ye pulled out his right hand from the robber's chest and threw the scarlet liquid on his hand to the ground in disgust. The sudden change made everyone in the hall, including the robbers, confused, but Bai Ye, who had already taken action, was not going to talk nonsense with them. Looking at the four robbers surrounding him, Bai Ye's right hand turned into an afterimage, and he punched 3 times in half a second, each punch aimed at the cheeks of these people. Out! Bang bang bang, that with 3 muffled sounds mixed with broken bones, the cheeks of the 3 robbers in front of them seemed to have been hit by heavy artillery. The terrifying impact directly sent several people flying 4 to 5 meters away. As the 3 bodies landed heavily, you could see the wounds on their cheeks that looked like they had been hit by large-caliber rifles, and their entire faces were sunken due to the huge force. Bai Ye's fist directly shattered their skulls, and under the huge pressure, pink-white slurry mixed with blood was squeezed out of these people's orifices. It was only then that the robber, who was the first to have his heart ripped out by Bai Ye, fell to his knees with his legs so weak. In the flash of lightning, 4 of the 7 musketeers were killed in Bai Ye's hands. 1 person was stabbed through the heart, 3 people had their skulls shattered. You bunch of idiots, no one can get out alive today. Bai Ye said through gritted teeth. The 2 robbers on the side finally reacted. Looking at their helpless companions, they pointed their submachine guns at Bai Ye and quickly pulled the trigger. Before that, Bai Ye had noticed their movements and slammed his right leg on the ground. Boom! That everyone only felt a slight tremor on the ground. The beige tiles under Bai Ye's feet were shattered inch by inch. In 1 second, from starting to accelerating, Bai Ye's body was ejected 8 or 9 meters away like a spiritual snake. A series of bullets chased the figure that disappeared in the white night and continuously hit the wall behind him, leaving craters one after another. 3 seconds later, as the magazine of the submachine gun was emptied, before the 2 men could change the magazine or take out the pistols they carried, the terrifying figure with blood still dripping from his hands was already standing in front of him. Bai Ye looked at the robber who was trying to retreat. He raised his right hand high and slashed down like a giant axe. Starting from the shoulder blade, he irresistibly tore his entire body in half, including bones, internal organs, muscles and skin. In an instant, a blood flower bloomed in front of the bank lobby, while Bai Ye turned his head slightly and stared at the last robber leader who was still capable of action. Looking at the man wrapped in red and black, it was obviously just a simple gaze. But at this moment the robber felt that he was being targeted by a prehistoric Tyrannosaurus. Faced with Bai Ye's approaching step by step, cold sweat broke out from the back of the robber leader. He pointed his pistol at Bai Ye's head and fired 3 shots, but Bai Ye easily avoided them by tilting his head. At this moment, Bai Ye's physical fitness has exceeded the limit of human beings. With a mental level of 1.5, he can simulate the ballistic trajectory of the pistol in front of him in his mind, and with a power of 1.7, you can dodge the opponent's bullet 1 second before it comes out of the barrel. As the leader fired all the bullets in his pistol, Bai Ye walked up to him, grabbed the robber by the collar, and slapped him with a big mouth. "Let me ask you, what kind of bank do you think you can rob if you don't have the ability? What do you think of robbing a bank? Asshole!" Bai Ye kept slapping the robber's cheek with his right hand, making a dull banging sound. While slapping, he asked, "Is robbing a bank fun? You think you're just playing house, and you're still acting in a Chiong drama in front of me. I can't even grab a counter." Although he withdrew his strength, the leader still felt as if he was being slapped by a giant bear. He could no longer think coherently, and was soon beaten to death by Bai Ye's powerful memory recovery technique. After killing the robber, Bai Ye tidied his blood-stained shirt impatiently, looking at the blood splashing in the entire hall. Although it was the first time he saw blood on his hands, Bai Ye's heart was still untroubled. In the past few years of his underworld career, he had seen this kind of thing a lot. Be mentally prepared. Bai Ye got up and went to the corner, took out his suitcase from a pile of looted stolen money, then turned around and walked towards the tied hostages step by step. Seeing Bai Ye coming, especially when his fair face was still stained with blood, they all backed away in fear. Bai Ye walked up to the customer service person, bent down and slowly helped her untie the rope. Under the confused gaze of the customer service, he pushed his suitcase over and said with a smile, "Open a bearer account for cleaning purposes." Chapter 22. I'm just a fitness enthusiast. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At this time, Director George outside the bank was in a dilemma. On the one hand, they agree to the robber's request, compromise with them, let them leave, and then rescue other hostages. The other side is to adopt a tough attitude and attack directly, which may cause huge sacrifices, but no matter which method is used, the final result will be a huge blow to the prestige of the New York police. He himself prefers to adopt the first method, which can best save the hostages. As for the robbers, George, who knew the forces behind the bank, had no doubts about their fate. However, his superior directly asked on the phone to take tough measures against the robbers and not to give in at all to the robbers. After spending a few minutes making a decision, before he could make a decision, a series of gunshots rang out inside the bank, which made George nervous, because all the surveillance inside had been destroyed by the robbers. He didn't know what was going on inside, and thought it was the robbers who were impatient and urging him. The belated negotiator was holding a microphone and shouting from a distance, "People inside, listen, we are preparing your request. Don't hurt the hostages. We can talk about any problems." Inside, Bai Ye, who was covered in blood, listened to the sound of the loudspeaker outside, calmly waiting for the customer service to count the cash in his suitcase and officially record it into the account. This money was also officially placed under the bank's management. Anything that happened after that neither will be found on his head. After solving these problems, Bai Ye breathed a sigh of relief, wiped the blood on his face, walked to the sink and simply washed the blood on his hands, then calmly opened the bank door and walked out. The police officers who were waiting eagerly outside the door were already impatient. When they saw someone coming out, they all looked around, only to find that it was still the Asian young man who came out, but compared to the clean black and white plaid shirt before, Bai Ye's white body at this moment was covered in large areas of blood red, and his whole body seemed to have walked out of a Shura field. George's heart skipped a beat at that time, and he almost believed that the robbers inside were massacring the hostages. But Bai Ye raised the phone in his hand and said, Slowly, the officer is fine. All the robbers have been killed. You can come over. What do you mean? George listened to the voice on the intercom and suspected that he heard it wrong. You are too slow. I have killed the robber. You can come over and close the net. Bai Ye repeated. Been beaten to death by you. The police officers next to the walkie-talkies were all stunned. Most of them were probably killed by me. The remaining one was wounded by a gunshot and lost the ability to resist, so I didn't take action. Bai Ye used his words carefully. After saying that, he gently put down the phone in his hand and walked towards the police. As he approached, the smell of blood hit his face, making the nearby police officers frown. Although he was very confused, when he saw Bai Ye approaching, George still went up to him. Soon a police officer came to help him, but Bai Ye stopped him. No need, I'm not hurt. This is indeed the case, if it were said that his bones and muscles might have broken due to too much force before, but just before the battle started, he had already put all 0.2 attribute points on his physique, forming a balance between strength and defense. Bai Ye's panel now is, name, Bai Ye, lifespan, 18/400. Strength, 1.5 plus 0.2. Constitution, 1.5 plus 0.2. Spirit, 1.5 plus, Charisma, 1.4 plus, attribute points to be used, 0.1, gift crab. Wang Defa. Oh, it's embarrassing. At this time, the police officers who rushed into the bank to investigate looked at the bloody flowers exploding inside and screamed in surprise. Listening to the sounds coming from inside, George thought they were making a fuss and walked in. The next moment, he couldn't help but gasp. Scattered corpses, overflowing brains, sunken faces, split bodies, and weak, pitiful and helpless hostages huddled in the corner. Here, the ground is littered with every visible human organ. George exited the bank with a pale face. After ordering the police to seal off the scene and not allowing any media to enter, he looked at Bai Ye seriously and said, Did you really kill those people inside? Are you a mutant? No, he's just a fitness enthusiast. Bai Ye had no reason to agree to the other party. After all, when these people investigated, they would definitely have to undergo a physical examination and a blood test, and this lie would be exposed. Are you kidding me? What fitness enthusiast can tear someone in half with their body? Director, I am the victim. Isn't the tone of your questioning inappropriate? Bai Ye raised his head and asked, In this case, as long as it is for legitimate defense, even if I chop them into minced meat, it will be fine, right? George was choked by Bai Ye's words. After all, there was nothing wrong with what Bai Ye said. Judging from the situation at the scene, Bai Ye had no connection with the robbery, and his behavior was indeed self-defense. In this case, they could at most conduct some inquiries and interrogations, and they could not even restrict his freedom of life too much. Just when Bai Ye was squatting on a chair and thinking about his bad luck today, the reporters outside who had been watching for a long time could not sit still and rushed up one by one with cameras and microphones. Bai Ye looked at the countless reporters gathered in front of him and their cameras, with a gentle smile on his face and said, Can you ask me one by one? I can't answer everyone's questions at once. I'm a reporter from the Daily Bugle. I want to know what happened inside the bank. Why did you come out of it covered in blood? All the blood on my body came from the robbers. In fact, the situation just now was very dangerous. Facing the robbers' pressure, I had no choice but to fight back. After a narrow escape, I managed to kill them all. Bai Ye explained, In this case, public opinion must be characterized, otherwise who knows what will happen in the end. You killed all the robbers. And then walked out of it safe and sound. The reporter and the audience watching the live broadcast were stunned. Yes, the whole process is really thrilling. If I don't pay attention, I will be hit by bullets. Excuse me, are you a mutant? The reporter raised his hand and asked in confusion. Of course not. I am a human being. The reason why I have become so strong is just because I have the habit of exercising. Bai Ye said. Are you sure that ordinary humans can kill several armed robbers without any damage by just exercising? Of course, as long as you add some appropriate exercise methods, you can also reach my level. George had a headache and stood in front of the reporter for Bai Ye, using official language to block the reporter's inquiries. At the same time, he asked other police officers to take Bai Ye over to do transcripts and physical examinations. In a hospital in central New York, Matthew was lying leisurely on the bed, but his ears heard the footsteps of Amy, who had just left the ward from the corridor. What's going on? Why is Amy back? Matthew wondered, and Amy opened the door and said excitedly, "Hey, Matthew, the passerby I mentioned yesterday has been found." Yesterday? That's the super good-looking young man in that picture of your friend. Let me tell you, he's even prettier in real life than in that picture. Amy said excitedly. As soon as he said this, Matthew immediately remembered that he was the man who shot off all his hands and feet. Where did you see him? It's on TV. Matthew was stunned and said, "Ah. On TV? Yes, I heard that he single-handedly killed a robbery gang just now." Matthew. Chapter 23 Lawyer. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At noon, at the entrance of Osborne Company, students gathered here after visiting. Osborne Company is so boring. They keep introducing us to a brief history of the company, as well as various biological experimental processes, including spiders, lizards and mice. Who wants to hear this? A student complained, causing the people around him nodded in agreement. By the way, where is Teacher James? He went out just now. Why hasn't he come back yet? I do not know. Listening to the conversation of his classmates, Peter Parker shook his somewhat groggy brain and silently left the crowd and walked home. Name? White Knight. Gender? Male. Home address, and out at the New York Police Headquarters. Bai Ye, who had changed into clean clothes, sat on a chair and calmly faced the police's questioning. When he took action to kill the group of robbers, he was already mentally prepared. If he was really sentenced to 1.5 years for killing, then he felt that New York was too urban and needed to be restored. With his current ton-level strength, not to mention confronting modern force, it is still easy to escape from prison. When the time comes, the cat will get up and practice for 3 to 5 years. Without Thanos 10 years from now, he will also let New York reduce headcount by more than 50%. Outside the torture room, Director George, who was unaware of Bai Ye's intentions, looked through Bai Ye's past in his hand. His parents were Chinese immigrants. They lost all their money because of gambling. Not long after, they were found dead on the street. When the body was found, several of its organs were missing. Bai Ye's resume, on the other hand, is much clean. He simply went to school. Not long ago, he spent a lot of money to get a gym card, and then he started skipping classes frequently. The reason why he was robbed of a bank today was because he skipped classes. Judging from the records, Bai Ye does not have any criminal record, and there seems to be no problem. But if you think about it, you will know how Bai Ye, a helpless person, has survived the past few years and has no record of part-time work. According to the records, you currently don't have any job. How did you get so much cash? Inside, the police officer asked. As we all know, I am very handsome, so it is reasonable for someone to give me money, right? Bai Ye said, and this obviously has nothing to do with the robbery. I can completely refuse to answer these questions. The police officer in front of him paused, looked up at Bai Ye, and then lowered his head silently, unable to refute. Dong dong dong. Just as the police officer was about to continue questioning, there was a knock on the closed door, forcing him to suspend what he was doing. After opening the door, the police officer saw George at the door, followed by a man wearing sunglasses, leaning on a cane, and with bandages on his hands and feet. Chief, who is he? The police officer asked. Bai Ye was also surprised when he saw the person coming. Although he was wearing a mask at the time, he recognized it at a glance. This was the daredevil who was sent to the hospital by him a few days ago. He was also wondering how this guy could come here. This is Bai Ye's lawyer. George explained. He couldn't understand why Bai Ye, a person with such a miserable family background, would have a lawyer come to his door not long after the case. Moreover, this lawyer looked so miserable, as if he had just come out of the hospital. My client is a victim first, and it is self-defense. You have no reason to detain my client in the police station. Matthew said righteously to George. 3 hours later, Bai Ye and Matthew came out of the police station. Although they left the police station, as a deep participant in this robbery, Bai Ye's scope of activities was temporarily limited to New York City. And if there are new developments in the subsequent case, he may need to be summoned for investigation. Why would you want to come here to be my lawyer? On the street, Bai Ye turned his head and looked at Matthew beside him. Shouldn't you be thinking of sending me to prison? Can the prison hold you? Matthew turned around and asked, are we going to wait for you to escape from prison and take revenge on society? Let society produce another criminal who looks like a bullseye. I already understand your family situation. I don't want to raise another social criminal. Although you have already half-footed it in, there is still a possibility of turning back if you change your mind. I thought superheroes were all about getting rid of evil, but I didn't expect you to be quite sensible. Bai Ye put his hands in his pockets and smiled. Just think of it as repayment for not killing me. Your physical fitness is so good. If you are interested in being a superhero, I can teach you, just like my master taught me. Matthew said slowly. He hoped that through words and deeds, the young man in front of him could change his ways. You teach me. Bai Ye looked at the other party's bandaged hands and feet. Don't forget who sent you to the hospital. That was a sneak attack that you took advantage of when I wasn't prepared. Your attacks were all brute force. With my skills, I can be your teacher. If I do it again, I won't lose again. Matthew said seriously. If not before the injury healed, he wanted to drag Bai Ye into another fight. Then why didn't your invincible skills prevent you from discovering my sneak attack? Bai Ye curled his lips. He had time to practice his skills, so he might as well practice them and just reduce his strength to 10 levels. That's it. Thank you very much for coming to me as my lawyer even though you were injured today. You can go back now. I'll contact you if I have any legal issues. Bai Ye said nonchalantly, with a tone like a scumbag who has squeezed out all the remaining value of a licking dog. In Matthew's helpless expression, Bai Ye turned around without any regret at the intersection and walked towards the gym. As he walked, he took out his mobile phone, which already had dozens of missed calls. The callers included teachers, principals and various former classmates. As Bai Ye walked toward home, he rummaged through these phone numbers and picked out the one belonging to his teacher James and called back. The phone rang twice and was quickly answered, and the other party's hesitant voice came out. Bai Ye, are you at the police station now? No, I just asked a few questions and came out. I'm on my way home now. Bai Ye explained and continued, Teacher, you also know that the current situation is a bit complicated, so I want to take a month off to recuperate at home. Faced with Bai Ye's request, James's attitude at the moment could be described as gentle, without any dissatisfaction from before. A month? I don't have this authority, but I will help you talk to the principal. You just need to rest at home now. Thank you, teacher. Bai Ye thanked him with satisfaction, and then hung up the phone. Throughout the whole process, the teacher neither asked why he skipped class and went to the bank nor talked about the murder in the White Night. It was as if he had no idea at all. After all, the teacher's profession is just a job, and it would be best not to ask about such things. Turning off the phone, Bai Ye ran to the gym and felt his bones were itching after being idle for a long time. Chapter 24. The meridian is cut off. I did it on purpose. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. When Bai Ye came to the gym, Smith had been waiting here for a long time. After all, in the morning, Bai Ye's face was all over the headlines in New York, and it was impossible not to pay attention. Looking at Bai Ye, Smith had a complicated look on his face. Yesterday, he was still looking forward to what surprise Bai Ye would bring him today, but today he had such a big job. Let's start training. Bai Ye didn't waste any time. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to start training, but was interrupted by Smith. Bai, our boss knows about you and is ready to talk to you. Smith whispered. Your boss. Bai Ye paused and looked at Smith. Yes, he is the owner of this fitness club. After knowing that you are exercising here, he wants to have a chat with you tonight, so let me ask you if you have time tonight. What to talk about? Because your image is so good, I want you to be an endorsement for the club or something. The endorsement fee starts at tens of millions, and the specific amount is negotiable. Smith said. What if I don't want to see him? Bai Ye asked directly. Our boss has also said this. If you don't want to, forget it. At the same time, he also wants to make you a friend. He will take the initiative to refund the money you paid in our gym. In the future, as long as you are willing, you can do it for free 24 hours a day. Work out with us. Furthermore, because this club in New York was built many years ago, it has some old-fashioned equipment. In order to meet your needs, the latest equipment can be shipped over tomorrow. If you need it, we can even spend money to measure it for you. Tailor-made equipment that matches your capabilities. That's quite generous. Bai Ye raised the corner of his mouth. The other party was so polite, but he felt a little embarrassed to refuse. After thinking for a while, Bai Ye looked at Smith. Then tell your boss that I don't have time this month. I will visit him in person next month. Then I will have a big deal worth more than 100 billion to discuss with him. 100 billion? Smith said in surprise. Yes, you will know when the time comes. Let's start exercising now. This time, just increase the barbell to 1 ton. I will do a set of squats first. Bai Ye ordered, adding 0.2 to the physical fitness today, which can be considered as keeping up. Once you gain strength, you don't have to worry about physical injuries caused by excessive exercise. 1 ton. But the barbell here can only be increased to 260 kilograms at most. Smith was confused. It's okay, I'll just stack 4 of them together and take them. Bai Ye waved his hand carelessly, but he soon discovered that this was impossible because after adding weight plates to the barbell, he could only hold 1 barbell with 1 hand. Even if he is strong enough, he can only hold 2 at most with his hands, and carry 1 behind his neck at most. The fitness equipment used by ordinary humans can no longer satisfy him. In desperation, Bai Ye could only reduce the intensity of the exercise to 780 kilograms. However, as the training volume decreased, he found that he could not even sweat at this level of exercise, let alone tired. As his physical attributes improved, his physical recovery speed also continued to increase. He was clearly doing squats with a load of nearly a ton, and the tiles under his feet were almost crushed by him, but he did 1,000 squats in a row. My face didn't even turn red. Obviously, the recovery of physical strength is greater than the consumption during exercise. It would be great if Magneto was here. With his ability, he could directly add strength to the lever in my hand. When Bai Ye thought of this, he felt pity in his heart. After so many days of exercise, he also discovered that with the same intensity, when the body reaches its limit, the effect of exercise is almost doubled. Unfortunately, as the attribute points increase, it will be almost impossible to reach the limit due to exercise in the future. In desperation, Bai Ye could only do squats while asking, "Do you have sulfuric acid here?" Sulfuric acid? Forget it, I'll bring it myself tomorrow. Bai Ye shook his head and rejected the idea. Now he should be able to try taking a bath in sulfuric acid with a purity of more than 70%. But today the school is supposed to visit Osborn for a work visit, and Peter Parker should have been bitten by a spider by now. He speculated in his mind, then another idea came to his mind. He looked at Smith and ordered, "Go over there and get a barbell without plates, and then hit me with it." "Bai, do you mean to beat you with a barbell?" Smith said with a strange look on his face. "Yes, I want to practice my ability to resist being hit." "Don't worry, you don't have to worry that I will get hurt." "Who are you worried about?" "I'm afraid that I'll tire myself to death." Smith cursed, then picked up a barbell from the side without a barbell, and swung it on Bai Ye's back with all his muscles. Boom! Thud! As Smith struck with all his strength, the steel rod in his hand was like hitting a rubber wheel, shaking his right hand to the ground and making him slightly numb. Bai Ye, who was attacked, felt a slight sting on his back. From Smith's perspective, he could see a slight redness on his fair skin, but other than that, there was no change. Did you use too much force? It feels a bit light. My internal organs don't feel like they were hit and shocked. Bai Ye asked while opening the description column and found that this was indeed very useful. As long as he received more than 5,000 sticks, his physical fitness could be improved by 0.1. I definitely tried my best. Smith said seriously, shaking his numb right hand. Well, don't hit me on the back. Just hit me on the back of the head. I feel like this will have a better effect. Bai Ye said. One dared to say it, the other dared to do it. Not long after he finished speaking, Bai Ye, who was doing squats, was hit squarely on the back of the head by Smith. Bai Ye took a breath of pain, as if he heard the sound of bones breaking, and his whole head was buzzing. Looking back at Smith, who was about to pick up the stick again, Bai Ye quickly said, let's slow down the training intensity first. Hit him on the back, it seems his head is still a little fragile. Oh. Smith obediently aimed at Bai Ye's back again and beat him with all his strength, but after all, his physical strength was not as good as Bai Ye's. His arms started to feel numb after just a few dozen sticks. In the end, he had to sit aside to rest and watch Bai Ye exercise alone, and Bai Ye soon found a new way of exercising in self-training, which was to disrupt the internal force circulation in the body and destroy the original route, which was called self-severing of meridians, feeling the internal energy flowing freely through the body, causing a pinprick-like pain. A satisfied smile appeared on Bai Ye's face. Description column. You have completed a severe meridian rupture caused by internal force retrograde, and it will take a total of 70 minutes to fully recover. Repeat 34 times, physical fitness will increase by 0.1. Repeat 124 times, the spirit will increase by 0.1. Chapter 25 Recruitment. Recruitment. Good luck to you. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. In the evening, Director George took a break from his busy work and felt a headache when he thought of the large number of reporters surrounding the police station. The purpose of these reporters was to make headlines, and they wanted to interview Bai Ye after he came out. In order to prevent the situation from expanding and to protect Bai Ye's personal information, he sent Bai Ye and his lawyer out of the back door of the police station in advance. Now the whole of New York is in an uproar. Because of this bank robbery, especially when the police failed to solve it for a long time and were killed by a young man in 2 or 3 strokes. This is really very talkative. In addition, the long white night is amazing, so both the Yen party and the plot party can arouse interest and pay attention to this matter. After an afternoon of fermentation, the internet even gave Bai Ye titles such as the Savior of the New York Police and the Robin Hood of the 21st century. On TV, the news host spoke righteously. This humiliating defeat of the New York police has become the biggest topic in the American police community. Former U.S. Police Chief Hoover commented on this. The former chief, who has always been vigorous and resolute, to say that the New York police behaved like this is really shameless. New York City Mayor Adams turned off the video on the screen, turned back to look at the senior officers of the police department and said, "Now the public voice of your police department in New York City also knows that it has seriously affected the government's image in the eyes of the citizens. This incident it must be resolved immediately." In the conference room at this moment, the senior police officers were all muttering in their hearts, thinking that the mayor had always been careless about the police before, so why was he suddenly so concerned today? But only a few people such as George knew clearly that the mayor was seeing the next election about to begin and was worried that it would affect his turnout, so he suddenly became concerned. The crux of the problem lies in the key issue. No matter what, you must solve this matter. I have called you here now because I want you to come up with a charter on how to solve this matter. The mayor looked at George. Since no one is talking, let the director speak first. After all, you are involved in this whole process. George didn't expect that he would have his own troubles. He stood up helplessly and said, "I think the police officers should be more professional and trained." Okay, you don't need to say it. What you said makes sense, but what I want is an immediate way to change public opinion. The mayor stopped hastily, turned to the deputy director and said, "Do you have any ideas?" "I have an idea." The deputy director hesitated for a moment and then stood up and said, "Since the public opinion of the police station is caused by that boy, then we can just recruit that boy." Recruitment? The mayor said thoughtfully. Yes, now the whole of New York is comparing that young man's strength with our police department. If that's the case, why don't we just recruit him into the police department? The deputy director said, but this statement made the mayor's eyes one light. As long as we make a statement to the outside world that our police department has learned a lesson and let the young man who solved the bank robbery enter the police station, the public's eyes will only focus on that young man. And it can also allow the government to give citizens a sense of listening to people's opinions, and reverse the previous bad feeling of being superior. The deputy director said while thinking, and the more he talked, the more feasible his method was. But that guy didn't even graduate from high school. Are we going to make an exception and let him join the police? There has never been such a precedent before. George stood up and said. What's the point? He doesn't have to join the job directly. Instead, he joins with the title of special advisor to the police. Then we won't need him to handle cases. We just need to borrow his name to support us, the deputy director said. In the later stage, we can directly promote him as a rising star in the police force. With his good looks, he can even change the government's image. Okay, your idea is very practical, so let's follow your method. The mayor of New York said directly, then looked at George and said, since the deputy director has come up with the idea, it's up to you to implement it. Huh? George pointed to himself helplessly. Otherwise, among the people here, you are the only one who has the most contact with that young man. If you are not allowed to go up, who will go up? The mayor said matter-of-factly. George looked around and found that the colleagues around him had subconsciously distanced themselves from him. The mayor looked at George and said calmly, this matter is related to the glory of the government. I remember that you have been mayor for almost 5 years. I hope you will not relax and work hard during this last period of your term. Facing this naked threat, George nodded helplessly and said, I know, I will talk to him and try to get him to join the police station. It's not about trying our best, it's about doing it for sure, the mayor emphasized. You completed a weighted squat for a total of 21,543 times, and the upper limit of your mental attributes increased to 1.6. As the description column changed, Bai Ye gently lowered the 3 barbells on his body. It was already dark outside the gym, and it was late at night. After squatting at full speed for 7 or 8 hours in the white night, I didn't feel tired at all, only the hunger after a long period of exercise. Is this enough for today? Smith asked. You can go back first, I'll stay here tonight. Bai Ye said, now his family background will definitely be investigated thoroughly, and he will definitely be entangled by the group of reporters squatting at home when he returns. Since the club owner said that he can live here 24 hours a day, he will call this place his home for the time being. Feeling hungry, Bai Ye walked out of the club and walked towards the shops outside, but before going out, a phone call made him change his schedule. Looking at the unfamiliar number on his phone, Bai Ye hesitated for a while and chose to answer the call. Hey, who are you? How did you know my number? Bai, right? I am the chief of the police, George. I met with you today. I have some things about the police station that I want to talk to you about. What are you doing now, Director George? Bai Ye recalled in his mind the middle-aged man he had seen this morning, and there was really no difference in his voice. Bai Ye hesitated for a while and then said, I don't have anything to do right now. I'm going to have dinner. Is that so? I happen to not have dinner either. If you don't mind, come to my house for dinner. George invited on the phone. Have dinner. Bai Ye frowned slightly, not understanding the other party's intention, but it shouldn't be a bad thing. After all, if you really wanted to harm him, there was no reason to bring him to your home. Okay, Director, wherever your home is now, I'll go there right now. Bai Ye nodded. After writing down George's phone number, Bai Ye hung up the phone and walked directly to his home, but before going, another call also came into his mobile phone, still from an unfamiliar number. Zhutian, the next sentence of Zhutian, doesn't it mean Zhao Xinyaoan, kill in Tokyo, and seize the bird's position? Chapter 26 Your own cabbage can win over pigs. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. What happened? Are these guys getting together to call me today? Bai Ye looked at the unfamiliar number and pressed answer again. Ah, Bai, I didn't expect you to be doing quite well now and even appear on TV. A familiar voice came over the phone. After hearing this voice, Bai Ye frowned almost subconsciously. Uncle Li, what's the matter with you? Bai Ye asked. It's nothing, I just care about you. After all, you are on TV now, so you can't have any stain, he. The voice on the other side smiled very easygoing, but the threatening meaning in the words made Bai Ye gag. The other party was unkind, so Bai Ye didn't bother to argue and asked directly, what do you want? I saw on the internet that there are many groups that are ready to endorse you. As for the bids, TSK, it's really a waste of money to make money quickly. Uncle Li expressed his purpose with emotion. As for what I want, it's very simple. I only need $30 million so that all the things you have done before can be covered up forever. 30 million. Or US dollars. When Bai Ye spoke, murderous intent had already entered his heart, and he refused. Where can I get so much money? As long as you accept more orders, the money won't come rolling in for you. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. If you don't want to do it then, bye-bye, you don't want the whole United States to know about your glorious past. After the words fell, Bai Ye's phone heard busy signals one after another, but the other party hung up first. 3 days to think about it. Bai Ye looked up at the bright moon with a corner of the sky empty. For these guys who are determined to take death, only 2 days are enough. The next moment, Bai Ye took steps again and ran directly towards Director George's home. The journey was uneventful. Bai Ye no longer concealed himself, quickened his pace, and ran like a gust of wind. In a short while, he arrived at the address given by George. If there was any benefit to Bai Ye's exposure, it was that he no longer had to carefully conceal his physical fitness. After all, everyone now knows that he single-handedly killed a gang of armed robbers, so it makes sense to run faster and be stronger. Standing at the door, Bai Ye gently rang the doorbell. After a while, the door opened quickly, and a pretty girl with blonde hair and a shawl appeared in front of Bai Ye. Hello, we meet again. Bai Ye gently greeted the surprised Gwen in front of him. How did you come to my house? Gwen looked at Bai Ye in surprise, subconsciously adjusted her blonde hair, then put her hands behind her back, with 2 blushes on her face. Is this your home? Chief George invited me here for dinner. Bai Ye pretended not to know. In fact, as long as you know a little bit about the Marvel plot, you will know that Gwen has a father who is a director, so Bai Ye is very interested in Gwen opening the door. Not surprising. My dad invited you to come to my house for dinner. Gwen suddenly remembered that he saw Bai Ye being involved in a robbery during the day, and worried. I saw the news this morning. You didn't get hurt. No, but do we have to keep talking at the door like this? Bai Ye looked inward, and then Gwen realized that she was just chatting, forgetting the environment, and pulled Bai Ye's arm forward to bring him into the house. Come, and then whispered, Dad is in the room. He has a bad temper. Please give him some slack. When Bai Ye listened to Gwen's words, her warm breath tickled her earlobes. Suddenly, I felt a subtle sense of déjà vu. The way I looked now looked too much like the way my boyfriend visited his girlfriend's house for the first time. It always felt weird. Thinking like this, Bai Ye subconsciously distanced himself a little away from Gwen, because he had already heard the sound of footsteps approaching from the kitchen. In order to avoid the director's undue attention, it is better to keep a proper distance. The next moment, a woman in her 40s wearing a floral apron walked out of the kitchen. Her eyes lit up after seeing Bai Ye's appearance, and her tone was a little softer. You are Bai Ye, right? Welcome to my house for dinner. I am George's wife. Just call me Aunt Helen. The food will be ready soon. Okay, you. Halfway through, she noticed that her daughter, who was standing next to Bai Ye, was holding hands with Bai Ye intimately at this moment, and her face turned crimson under her gaze. What are you doing? Helen opened her mouth in surprise. At this time, George also walked out of the room with a serious face. Seeing the scene in front of him, his brain shut down. Let me introduce to you, this is Bai Ye, who is also an alumnus of Zhutian High School. We have met a few times before, but this time I didn't expect that my father would invite Bai Ye to our house for dinner. Gwen took Bai Ye's right hand and smiled. Said, we were schoolmates, and after meeting each other a few times, we immediately held hands. Helen had so many things to say in her heart that she didn't know where to start, especially when she saw Bai Ye's confused face and her daughter's shy expression. It was obvious that her daughter was the one pursuing her, and she didn't know what to think. George, who was even more excited in his heart, originally wanted to say something, but when he thought that he had invited the other party over, and that he had something to ask for from the other party, he held back a sentence for a long time. Let's eat first. White Knight, he didn't know what to say anymore. Did something go wrong? Combining all the current intelligence, Bai Ye even came up with a somewhat ridiculous guess. George invited him over, not to act as a matchmaker for his daughter. Thinking of this, Bai Ye's eyes towards George changed somewhat. Unexpectedly, this old man was quite open-minded, with an indescribable feeling of weirdness. Bai Ye, under Gwen's pull, silently went to the table and sat on the chair near him. At this time, several young children in Stacy's family who had been looking forward to it for a long time watched Bai Ye sit down and said with stars in their eyes, "Brother, you look good. Are you my sister's boyfriend?" "No." Before Bai Ye could say anything, George on the side spoke first. "He is a guest invited by Dad. He is here to discuss things. Don't disturb him." "Oh." The children lowered their heads in disappointment. In their opinion, if such a beautiful brother is their sister's boyfriend, they will have many opportunities to play with him in the future. As soon as George finished admonishing his child, he turned around and saw his daughter and Bai Ye getting together intimately, introducing the delicious dishes on the table and asking Bai Ye in a low voice if she had any taboos. Seeing Bai Ye, who was feeling uncomfortable under his daughter's harassment, George no longer knew what to say. My own Jade. Cabbage actually started to support the pig so actively. Chapter 27. It's easy to get away with murder but hard to get away with it. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At this moment, in Stacy's home, under George's complicated eyes, Bai Ye was struggling to resist the girl's attack. "Bai Ye, what do you like to eat? You also think the steamed sea bass cooked by my mother is delicious." "I like it too. It seems that we have the same hobby in food. In fact, I can also cook some food. I will cook for you next time I have a chance. By the way, what do you usually like to play?" Looking at the girl in front of him who was looking sideways at him, with eyes that seemed to be stringy, Bai Ye turned his head away in discomfort. In this face-based world, you never know how proactive a girl will be when faced with a boy whose charm is at the top of the human form. In fact, the girl's pick-up skills are not very good, and even her persistence is a bit inferior. But the main point is her sincerity, which is so sincere that Bai Ye can't resist it. What Bai Ye couldn't understand even more was why Gwen made it so obvious. But none of the two parents at the dinner table stood up to speak. "If you don't say a few words quickly, your daughter may have to take off his clothes directly." At this moment, in Bai Ye's eyes, Gwen is more troublesome than facing 10,000 robbers. It was easy to deal with 2 mouthfuls, and after filling his stomach, Bai Ye looked at George, who had said nothing during the whole process. "The director invited me here today. It can't just be for dinner. Now that the meal is finished, we can talk about things. Let's talk on the balcony." George had almost finished eating, got up and walked to the balcony, followed by Bai Ye. Hearing that business was about to be discussed, everyone else stopped talking and watched the two people leave in silence. On the balcony, George put his hands on the handrails, looked at the houses in the distance and said slowly, "Do you know that the public opinion of the police department has seriously deteriorated today? Does this have anything to do with me?" Bai Ye asked back, "If your police station's force was stronger and the robbers were dealt with earlier, I wouldn't need to take action. You are right, but the police in New York are not extraordinary human beings like you, they are just a group of ordinary people with good quality. This is why I am looking for you today." George looked at Bai Ye and said, "We are here today to invite you to join our New York Police Department." No more. Bai Ye looked at George and said, "That's it. Where's the back? What's behind?" George was stunned. "Are there no conditions for you to let me join the police station?" Bai Ye frowned. "Conditions? What conditions? Considering that your status as a high school student is not enough to become a formal police officer, we can only settle for the next best thing and let you become a consultant of our police station. The conditions I'm talking about refer to the benefits, rights, and the help it can bring to me after joining. What are you thinking about? Who can join if there are no conditions?" Bai Ye rolled his eyes. "Well, the funds of the police station are relatively tight, but—" George was interrupted by Bai Ye mid-sentence. "Okay, don't think about it, I refuse," Bai Ye said without hesitation. "This poor guy is still trying to get away with this. He really thinks he is Song Jiang. You guys, you should just go ahead and deal with the petty thefts, and leave the powerful guys to the superheroes." Bai Ye said unceremoniously, in his opinion, it is natural for the New York police to be abolished. How could a group of ordinary people fight against those super criminals? Now Spider-Man has just mutated, and Iron Man is still a playboy, so in the eyes of the public, the New York police seem to be a bit useless. After all, there is a complete mismatch between expectations and abilities, but when superheroes and super criminals appear in spurts in the future, and after they get used to seeing all kinds of gods fighting, the public will understand that in superhero battles, the police are originally the ones doing the trick. After all, you can't expect $1 to be spent as $10. Accept that New York police officers are ordinary people, and it will be much better to lower your expectations. George was a little angry at Bai Ye's attitude. Leave it to those superheroes. You mean the group of people who have not shown their faces so far? Who knows their identities in reality? Without legal supervision, New York security would have been in ruins long ago. You know what the chaos is like. Ah, yes, yes. Bai Ye was too lazy to argue with him and nodded repeatedly. Since the meal has been finished and your request has been rejected by me, there is nothing else to do here. I will go back first and see you again when I have a chance. Wait a minute. George called out to Bai Ye. Is there anything else? Bai Ye turned around and asked. About Gwen. I know, I will keep my distance from her. Bai Ye made an okay gesture. No, I can come over often for dinner or something when I have the opportunity in the future. George said a little aggrievedly. He was really not satisfied with Bai Ye's character. He killed too many people and was too cruel. However, his daughter liked it. There's a chance. Bai Ye nodded silently, walked out of the balcony, and insisted on leaving despite the efforts of the Stacy family to stay. He had other things to do tonight. When he came to the street, the cold night wind blew on Bai Ye, making his heart feel colder and colder. Thinking of Uncle Lee's phone call, murderous intention gradually filled Bai Ye's heart. But we can't take action now. After all, friends who often kill people know that it is easy to get away with murder. If Uncle Lee had just called him and died at home that night, and he had just shown the ability to commit crimes, then the police would have directly identified the suspect as soon as they checked the call records. So for Bai Ye, the real problem is not to kill Uncle Lee, but to kill Uncle Lee without letting the New York police catch him. As for this method, Bai Ye already had some idea, wandering on the street. Bai Ye kept thinking about all the information he had before leaving the underworld. With the spirit of reaching 1.6, past memories surged like a tide and appeared in Bai Ye's mind. These memories all include the names and appearances of various gang leaders in New York City, as well as basic information such as home addresses. Soon, in the memory of the brain, Bai Ye quickly locked the first target, the leader of the counterattack gang, Brown Roderick. With the goal in mind, Bai Ye walked on the main road that could be monitored and filmed, returned to the club, then walked out of the back door without surveillance, and quietly sneaked into a nearby supermarket. Avoiding surveillance, he took out a set of clothes and a pair of shoes from the supermarket. Bai Ye left the equivalent in US dollars and left. Half an hour later, Bai Ye took out the product he wanted. After hesitating for a while, he headed towards his home. Before he started, he left one more important thing at home. Without that, it would be difficult to complete his project. Purpose. Chapter 28 Establishing a Character. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At night, on the second floor of a large villa covering an area of several hundred square meters in Brooklyn, New York, a brown-haired man in his 40s or 50s was lying leisurely on the sofa, relaxing and enjoying the automated service of the blonde in front of him, and they were not the only two people in the whole room. There were 4 bodyguards standing aside in full gear, guarding the room without looking back. As the leader of the counterattack gang, Brown Roderick finally climbed up to this position. Of course, he has to cherish his little life, so even in such private moments, he has to be careful, for fear that he will not survive. To the end of life, the bodyguards around him were all hired at high prices after serving in the army. Each of them was a muscular man who could fight 1 against 3 with his bare hands. They were equipped with body armor and pistols to ensure that no one could threaten his life. In front of Brown Roderick, a man with a sinister face stood respectfully. This man was his deputy. "Is the AK party uneasy recently?" Brown said casually, looking at the deputy in front of him. "Recently, they have indeed had conflicts with us in business matters, and their hands and feet are not very clean. 3 or 4 of our boys have been sent to the hospital," the deputy explained. TMD originally agreed to develop the underground drug business together, but the results have been getting more and more ugly recently. "It seems that we have to have a fight with them," Brown said, but the bodyguard beside him moved sideways to block in front of him. "What's going on? Why are you so nervous all of a sudden?" Brown asked doubtfully, but then he heard the sound of slightly heavy footsteps gradually getting louder in his ears. It was a person who was going upstairs. "Where are the bodyguards downstairs? Why didn't you stop him?" Brown thought with some panic. This sudden change caused Brown, who was originally full of interest, to return to normal size, and the blonde in front of him also stood up and shrank in Brown's arms with some fear. Boom! 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 Muffled footsteps reached Brown's ears, and the bodyguard alertly raised his pistol and aimed it in the direction of the stairs. Soon, an uncovered head slowly rose from the stairs. Brown's eyes widened, looking through the bodyguard's figure to see the person's head, a trace of fear lingering in his heart. What kind of face was that? It looked like it had been burned by fire. Even the hair had disappeared. The whole face was covered with scars and there was no intact skin, so the original appearance could not be seen clearly. Only a pair of dark eyes stared at them, like demons slain from hell. The moment the man's appearance appeared, a piercing scream came from the mouth of the blonde in Brown's arms. This scream was like a signal, and the 4 bodyguards' pistols, which were waiting for the shot, fired almost at the same time, hitting the man's exposed head. Boom! Bullets fired at the same time hit the man from 4 directions, but were blocked by a heavy iron door the next moment. In Brown's eyes, his stainless steel blast door, which weighed nearly a ton, had been removed at some point. Was grabbed by the man and blocked in front of him. No wonder the footsteps sounded so heavy before. How could it not be heavy to carry a gate? The man raised the iron door in his hand and walked up the stairs slowly. During this period, the bodyguards kept firing bullets, but they were unable to break through the defense of his door. "Who are you? You have something to say." At this moment, Brown threw the blonde aside in his arms and stepped back while trying to communicate. In response, the next moment, the man was seen grabbing the iron door, using it as a hidden weapon, and throwing it over with terrifying brute force. Boom! The unstoppable iron door carried terrifying kinetic energy and directly hit the 2 bodyguards who fired. After a dull impact, it continued to press on Brown's body, causing the 3 of them to die instantly. As for the other deputies and 2 bodyguards, they all had a fruit knife pierced through their skulls on their foreheads at the moment, and they fell to the ground silently, their breath cut off. Judging from the brand marked on the end of the knife handle, this fruit knife still comes from their home. The whole process from the man's appearance to the death of 6 people took no more than 5 seconds. The blonde as a plaything, as a survivor who was still alive, huddled in the corner in fear, afraid to make a sound. What was waiting for her was the hoarse voice of the man who finally spoke. "Don't worry, I won't kill innocent people who have no resistance. You can go away." After finishing speaking, the blonde finally dared to look up, only to see that the man was using the blood of several dead people to trace a giant S-shaped blood stain on the ground, which looked like a cult ritual scene. After doing this, the man did as he said. Without looking at her, he walked down the stairs silently and disappeared into the villa just as he came. Name, Bai Ye, lifespan, 18/500. Strength, 1.6 plus 0.2. Physique, 1.6 plus 0.2. Spirit, 1.6 plus, Charisma, 0.3 plus, attribute points to be used, 0.2. Description column. The total attribute value exceeds 6 points. Talent 2, the surplus of the strong, is activated, and the attribute points to be used are plus 0.1. You used sulfuric acid to destroy the epidermis of the head and hands, and it took a total of 184 minutes. To fully recover, repeat 781 times, physical fitness increased by 0.1. Repeat 215 times, the spirit will increase by 0.1. Looking at the description on the attribute panel, Bai Ye, who had just finished killing people and walked out of the villa, scratched the eroded and burned skin on his face. The process of growing it back after it was disfigured with sulfuric acid was extremely itchy for him. Yes, sulfuric acid disfigures one's face. After quietly returning home at night, what he wanted to get was the sulfuric acid used to disfigure his appearance. Only by completely changing his appearance and fingerprints can people stop people from connecting the murderer who killed gangs with him. Long before this, Bai Ye had done some experiments on his body and successfully understood what it meant to have a physical constitution of 1.5. It was a jump in life level. If the physique before 1.5 can only be regarded as a person with strong recovery ability, then after reaching 1.5, Bai Ye can be regarded as Tommy who cannot divide himself. As long as the injury didn't kill him on the spot, given enough time, he could slowly return to his original state through eating. Even if he was cut in half, given enough time, he could regrow his lower body. These are Bai Ye's reasonable speculations after a series of destructive tests on the body, and as described on the panel, it only takes 3 hours in the white night at this moment for the face that was disfigured by sulfuric acid to return to normal. The charm will return to the normal state of 1.4, and even the hair can grow again. And tonight is Bai Ye's first step to kill Uncle Lee. He first kills a gang leader, Ji Chi, and creates in others' minds a character of a revengeful evil god who has nothing to do with him, has his face disfigured, and is full of hatred for the underworld. Chapter 29 Fitness Equipment. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. At 7 o'clock on Thursday morning, Peter Parker woke up from his deep sleep and rubbed his blonde hair, feeling that every muscle in his body was full of strength. What's going on? My body looks like those of bodybuilders. Peter said in astonishment as he looked at his muscular upper body in front of the mirror. He made a somewhat clumsy boxing posture, and struck forward twice with his right hand. The air flow stirred up by his fists even caused the mirror in front of him to shake a little. Although he didn't know what caused his physical fitness to become stronger, he was still excited to adapt to his stronger body. At the same time, in Brooklyn, New York, Commissioner George, who had just come to work, looked serious as he looked at the 3 corpses crushed and deformed by the iron gate and the large S written in blood on the ground. They had just walked up from the main entrance of the villa and found that almost everyone in the entire villa had been killed. The only one who survived was the trembling blonde next to them. Can you tell me what happened yesterday? While other police officers were adjusting surveillance, George looked at the only survivor in the entire villa. As the blonde told her intermittently, George also knew that the person who did the attack was a man with scars all over his head and a terrifying appearance. Judging from his behavior during the attack, he was definitely a person with superpowers and was initially determined to be a mutant. At this time, the investigating police officer on the side came over and handed over the computer that retrieved nearby surveillance. George turned on the computer and started checking. Sure enough, he saw a man in black with a disfigured face entering from the front door without hesitation, killing everyone who stood in his way. With his extraordinary speed and strength, the man was also extremely decisive in his attacks. From the bodyguards to the hunting dogs, he died without any decent resistance. George, do you have any ideas? At this time, Deputy Director Maud also came to the scene and asked when he saw George checking the surveillance. George said while watching the surveillance, the deceased is a gangster. It cannot be ruled out that a rival gang hired the murderer. Didn't they have a conflict with the AK party recently? I still want to take the opportunity to close the network. Let's investigate this aspect first. At the same time, the murderer's appearance was completely disfigured. It may be that someone who was persecuted by the gang suddenly awakened his mutant ability, so he might come back to take revenge and kill. You can start from this point. Finally, check if there are any fingerprints left by the murderer in the villa, and check the deceased's recent call records. George said his suggestion. Maud nodded and then asked, by the way, the mayor told you to recruit that young man before. Have you acted? George shook his head and said, I asked, but he disagreed. It seems there is no hope of being re-elected as the next director. You should work hard. You just gave up. You didn't even try for it. The deputy director was speechless. I see you just asked and didn't even make any decent efforts. Why don't you let me help you and put some pressure on his school? Take joining the police academy as a graduation task, and if you don't agree, you won't be able to graduate successfully, so he will naturally agree. Hearing what Maud said, George paused the monitoring, turned around and said solemnly, I just found out yesterday that my daughter likes him. Although I don't like the boy very much, I can never block my daughter's love path. So what do you mean? New York is in chaos right now. Who knows when you will die as a police officer? It doesn't matter if I, the New York commissioner, retire. Your qualifications and achievements over the years are enough. No matter who the next mayor is, the next commissioner will probably be you. Yes. George said, looking at George's serious eyes. Maud could only give up the idea of continuing to pester Bai Ye, and couldn't help but said, just now I was thinking of handing this case over to him after absorbing that kid. Hearing what Maud said, George smiled and said, this is why I don't want him to enter the police station. New York is getting more and more chaotic now. If he really becomes my son-in-law, I don't want my daughter to be too young. It's easy to be a widow. While the two were talking and laughing, the police officer on the side ran over in a panic and said, Director, we just received news that there is another massacre not far from here. What? George's expression changed slightly as he asked, who is the deceased? The leader of the JK party, Ringo Murray. After the police officer finished speaking, the two stood up and prepared to go to the crime scene to check the situation. In the club, Bai Ye was looking at himself in the mirror. After a whole night of recovery, his appearance that had been burned by sulfuric acid had returned to perfect condition, and even his eyebrows and hair had grown back. I have to say that for Bai Ye, destroying 2 gang lairs in one night was a bit overwhelming, because although the description column said that it would take 3 hours to completely recover, after 2 hours, Bai Ye's face began to take on a human shape, so he had to race against time to complete the task before the disfigurement buff ended. But after going through such a big circle, no one should be able to connect that murderer to me. Bai Ye thought, as long as he kills all the gang leaders in New York, and then adds Uncle Lee's whole family into the mix, plus the disfigurement vest, no one will think that he is doing this for Uncle Lee. The dumplings made with vinegar are perfect. Click. Just as Bai Ye was looking at himself in the mirror, the door to the gym behind him was opened, and Smith, who had gotten up early, walked in. Bai, the new fitness equipment you asked me to customize last night has arrived and is now outside. Smith said. Oh, take me there quickly. Bai Ye's eyes lit up. He turned around and went outside with Smith. He saw several lumps of pig iron loaded on the forklift. On the outermost side are 2 cubes with a side length of about 0.5 and a weight of 1 ton. There is a handle imitating a stone lock at the top of the cube, which can be directly grasped and lifted with one hand. This is the fitness equipment that Bai specially asked Smith to go to the foundry to customize yesterday. Because the entire appearance is extremely simple, it can be easily made and shipped in one day with extra money. Now this 1-ton iron lump just matches his current progress and allows him to exercise one by one, and there is no need to worry when his physical fitness improves again. He only needs to make a larger hollow iron block and nest this iron lump into it, and he can exercise again. Now that we have this prop, at least we don't have to worry about the training facilities not being able to keep up for quite some time. he bent down and grabbed the 2 pieces of iron in front of him, feeling the heavy weight in his hands. Bai Ye said hello to Smith and walked into the gym. Chapter 30 Every day is like a year. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. In the morning, feeling the full strength in his body, Peter Parker, who was full of ambition, slowly walked down the stairs. On the table, Aunt May and Uncle Ben had prepared breakfast waiting for him. Seeing Peter walking down, Aunt May smiled gently and said, "You have been sleeping since you came back at noon yesterday. Come over for dinner quickly. I cooked more specially." "Thank you, Aunt May, I feel like I can eat a cow now," Peter said movedly, and went to the table to eat. While eating, Ben Parker turned on the TV, and the morning news was being broadcast. On the morning news in New York City at this moment, the reporter was standing in front of the bank that was robbed yesterday and explained formally, "As you can see, yesterday morning's robbery resulted in the injury of a security guard and the death of 6 robbers. The result was officially declared over when 1 robber lost the ability to resist." "Did another robbery happen in New York City yesterday?" Peter said while staring at the TV and eating. "Of course, it was quite a big fuss, and even I heard about it," said Uncle Ben. "The reason why such a thing happened is not because of the New York police, but because one of the kidnapped hostages surrendered," the reporter on the TV said, and the next moment a photo of Bai Ye was inserted in time and placed on the reporter's desk. Beside, the moment he saw the handsome face in the photo, Peter's wolfing movement stopped and he stared blankly at the TV. He exclaimed uncontrollably in his mouth full of food, "Wang Defa. This young man is very good looking." Yesterday, there were many young girls in our work unit who secretly printed photos with color printers. Aunt May said narrowly. "No, this." Peter didn't know what to say at all. He only felt that the whole world had changed after sleeping. When he woke up, his power suddenly increased sharply. Not only did his classmates suddenly appear on TV, he also killed 6 armed robbers. What happened to the world? After hemming and hawing for a long time and looking at Aunt May and Uncle Ben who knew nothing, Peter chose not to explain anymore. After quickly devouring the food on the table, he quickly got up and got on the school bus. On the way, he also tried to dial Bai's phone number, but got a reminder to turn off his phone. Unable to get confirmation immediately, he could only sigh, but when he looked up, he found his usual goddess Mary Jane walking towards him with a smile on her face, looking at his goddess's beautiful cheeks. Peter's heart inevitably started to beat faster, and he began to feel that today was his lucky day. But then he heard Mary Jane looking at him with concern and saying, "Peter, do you know where Bai Ye went? All our calls to him yesterday were unreachable. Can you contact him?" That the expectant expression on Peter's face fell away, and in Mary Jane's disappointed eyes, he shook his head in frustration to express his ignorance. At noon, in the gym, Bai Ye, who had once again trained his body to the limit due to the arrival of new training equipment, sat cross-legged on the floor. As his hands kneaded together, a steady stream of purple energy surged up from his face, lingering like clouds over Bai Ye's head. When practicing, let the purple energy condense into clouds and mist hovering above your head. This kind of momentum during practice has never been possessed by practitioners of the Zhutian magic technique in the past generations. Behind him, Smith was sweating profusely and kept waving the steel rod in his hand to hit Bai Ye's back, but he couldn't even shake his figure. Half an hour later, after Bai Ye raised his hands to make a posture with 5 hearts pointing to the sky, he slowly stopped the exercise, feeling an extra ray of internal energy in his body, and he was satisfied. For the Zhutian magic skill, a mediocre person needs to meditate for half a day to produce a trace of Zhutian's true energy, and even a peerless genius needs 15 minutes to produce a trace of it. According to the description of Zhutian in the group, the standard for judging internal strength in the martial arts world is based on the amount of true energy cultivated by mediocre people. A trace of Zhutian is equivalent to a day's practice for an ordinary person. 10 strands is 1 strand, 6 strands in the body is 1 year's internal strength, 360 strands is 10 years internal strength, and 3,600 strands is 1 year's internal strength. Hundreds of years of true energy, and Bai Ye, whose physical attribute reaches 1.8, can generate a trace of Zhutian Qi every 3 minutes, which is more than 10 times faster than his original self. He only needs to practice for 16 hours to have the internal strength of an ordinary person in his body for 1 year. A genius who practices for 1 day can be as good as an ordinary person who can practice for a year. This may be the origin of the idiom every day is like a year. After finishing his exercises, Bai Ye looked back at Smith, who was sitting aside panting for a long time due to exhaustion, and said, "Your physical strength has seriously affected the progress of my exercise." "Hey, Bai, what you said is a bit too much. An ordinary person like me who can hit with all his strength for 2 or 3 minutes is considered to have sufficient physical strength. Not everyone is like you." Smith complained. "I know, I'm not blaming you, I'm just trying to think of a solution to improve your physique." Bai Ye thought. "You can hire a few more people to beat you together." Smith said, but was immediately rejected by Bai Ye. "With my current progress rate, I can't trust other people. They may report me at any time. Only you can help me practice." Bai Ye thought to himself at this time, "I have too many secrets. It's not suitable for me to have too much contact with others during exercise. Moreover, Smith's character is easy to control. I also know where his home is. Even if he wants to reveal it, he has to worry about me. Retaliation, others are not so safe." Hearing that Bai Ye trusted him so much and didn't know what was going on in his heart, Smith couldn't help but feel moved. Bai Ye thought for a moment and said, "Let me teach you how to practice Zhutian magic kung fu, the same martial art that made purple clouds appear on my face when I meditated just now." "Chinese kung fu?" Smith stared. "Bai, are you going to teach me?" "Absolutely," Bai Ye said. He planned to write down the Zhutian magic technique silently when he went back tonight and then give it to Smith to practice. The reason why he was so nice to him was really not because he wanted Smith to help him improve his physique. After all, with this guy's qualifications, it would be pretty good if he could figure out the Zhutian magic skill within 10 years. It was mainly an advertisement for the deal with the club owner in a month's time. Yes, the so-called 100 billion transaction that Bai Ye mentioned yesterday was the Zhutian magic power. The reason why the time is set to 1 month later is because Bai Ye is not confident in his own strength now, so he plans to exercise for a month to see the effect. If his strength is still very good after a month, then he can directly meet the other party and wait until he is strong enough before trading. Anyway, the initiative is in his own hands. By the way, it's almost noon now. You should go back first. Bai Ye looked at the time and said, "I see you are very tired this morning. Take a rest and come back after 3 o'clock. "Thank you, boss." Smith thanked him. After hearing that Bai Ye's kung fu could be replicated and that he was going to pass it on to him, he wished he could just accept Bai Ye as his teacher. Watching Smith walk out of the club, Bai Ye took out a glass jar from the dark, which contained 98.3% pure sulfuric acid.